Alexia Hall with Black Video News, and we're here at St. Mary's University at the George Zimmerman Legal Forum, sponsored by San Antonio Black Lawyers Association. What's your name?
My name is Cleophas Marshall, and I am a defense attorney here in the city of San Antonio. I've been practicing law for nearly 15 years.
Okay, so if you were the closing prosecution, what would your closing statement be?
Well, this case is one of those cases where it could have gone either way, and unfortunately, Zimmerman was found not guilty. But there were some things that the prosecution could have done even before they came to the closing argument. For instance, they should never have allowed the video presentation by George Zimmerman to have been put in evidence in the trial. If George Zimmerman was going to tell his side of the story, then he should have been made to take the stand and tell his side of the story. Now, in the United States of America, you do not have to take the stand. You have a right to remain silent. But when you claim self-defense, in those instances, you may have to take the stand to make your claim of self-defense. And in this particular case, he was able to put on a video that basically gave his self-defense claim, and he was never able to be cross-examined because the state put the video on, and so then George Zimmerman was able to claim self-defense. That's one of the occasions. Also, when the police officer was giving his belief as to whether or not George Zimmerman was guilty, I would have objected to that. I thought that they could have prepared Rachel Gentile much better to testify, and they could have understood her, especially as a woman of color, and the language and the usage of words that were presented in trial. And I give you a great example. In the case, Rachel Gentile said that the last thing that she heard Trayvon Martin to say was "get off me." Now, the prosecution misunderstood those words. They took those words to mean that Trayvon Martin was being attacked by George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman was on top of Trayvon Martin, and the fight was ensuing. Well, the problem with that is that, one, it did not fit with the timeline, and two, I don't really believe that that happened. I believe that what she meant and what Trayvon actually meant when he was saying "get off me," that was the initial moment, I believe, when George Zimmerman invaded his space. That was the time when George Zimmerman got too close to him, and Trayvon Martin said, as young people say, "get off me," which meant "get out of my space." And after that, the phone goes silent. I believe that's when the confrontation really began to take place. And if the state would have understood something as simple as that, they would not have had to account for 4 minutes that the defense argued were missing. Because if they understood that to simply mean he had initially invaded his space, then it makes the timeline work much better for the state. So that's one example. But then in closing, I think the worst thing that the state did was that they failed to argue the charge. That is the instrument charging the jury with how they are to proceed on the law and determine this case. And the state failed to give the jury a path upon which to find George Zimmerman guilty. And that is to say, they should have taken that charge line by line and said, this is what these words mean. This is how we prove these words, so that you can now have a path to finding George Zimmerman guilty. So there are a lot of things that, you know, having been in a legal field for many years, there are a lot of things that I saw in that case that were very alarming. And a famous defense attorney here in the United States of America, Mark Garagos, said early on in the case, and as the case continued to proceed, he said that the state is trying to throw the case. And initially when he said that, I kind of didn't believe that, but as I began to look at the case more and more and listen to the facts and the evidence and how the state was presenting the case, I could only come to that conclusion.
So what do you think the motivation is for the state to throw the case?
Well, I don't think that the state really had a heart to try the case in the first place. I think that with all of the politics surrounding getting George Zimmerman arrested in the first place, I believe there were some people that just really didn't believe that they had a good case in the DA's office. And I believe that because the prosecutor, the special prosecutor that was given the case, and I do not recall her name, but she then gives it to another prosecutor. Now that's interesting because she is the same prosecutor who tried a lady in that county for shooting warning shots at her ex-husband, who had a protective order, who she had a protective order against, who was in her home about to assault her. She shot warning shots against that man. They prosecuted that lady, and she received a 20-year sentence. This prosecutor handled that case. Why did she not handle the Trayvon Martin case? Why did she, the Zimmerman case, why did she give it to another attorney to prosecute?
So do you think that race played a role in the state's decision to do this and the conviction of the black lady who shot warning shots? Or
I don't see, when you ask the case, does race play a role? I think the mindset is to believe, were there racists who had the ability to make decisions, and they made those decisions based upon race in an ill will type manner? And I don't think it always comes out that way. I think sometimes it's just a simple misunderstanding of race. It's a misunderstanding of a Trayvon Martin and what he could have been doing in that community. It's a misunderstanding of how different people see things differently. And I think when you begin to understand it that way, it's not always the case that people have ill will. Sometimes it's that they're ignorant. And I think, unfortunately, that can be as worse as having ill will.
once again, we're here at St. Mary's University at the George Zimmerman Legal Forum. I'm Alexi Hall. This is Black Video News.